Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Tominator, and next up in this all-time best body parts series is the midsection. That's right, we're talking trim waistlines, washboard abs, and razor-like obliques. The main emphasis, of course, is going to be on the abdominals themselves, as this is the most prominent muscle on display and the most flashy. Everybody loves to talk about abs, 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 but don't discount the obliques, as they really help contribute to that complete look through the core and add an extra element of detail when twisting to the side. But at the same time, it's important to not overdevelop the obliques, or they can start to make the waist look blocky. And lastly, the serratus anterior is like the cherry on top of this six pack sundae, so to speak. So it's not going to count for a whole lot, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have those little fingers of well defined muscles underneath the pecs, tying everything together. Okay, so that's what we're looking for here. But before we proceed, let's just quickly establish what we're not looking for, okay? This is a bodybuilding analysis channel, not a social media hype train kind of channel. So don't expect to see Ulysses Jr. or any of these other fake natty douchebags on here. Even though they admittedly do have some of the best midsections around, let's just say it's a lot easier to develop a standout set of abs when you don't have to worry about bulking up to 250 plus pounds in the off season. And the same goes for men's physique. These guys are basically judged on their abs, and they're carrying a lot less muscle mass, so naturally they're going to have better midsections than modern Mr. Olympia competitors. It's not a level playing field. And no offense to these physique contestants, but I don't consider them bodybuilders in the true sense of the word, since they don't hit actual bodybuilding poses, so they're also excluded from consideration. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into it. Rounding out the top 10 is Kevin Levrone. Now, this was a really tough call. There were at least half a dozen guys all vying for this spot, but at the same time, it was difficult to relegate a legend like Levrone to the bottom of the list. After all, Kevin did have a great midsection throughout the majority of his career, especially early on, like back at his Olympia debut in 1992, or here at his first Arnold Classic victory in '94. Those washboard abs and the deeply defined obliques really make this kneeling, Paris esque pose work for him. Even as he got bigger later on, Kevin maintained a very good set of abs, as evidenced here standing in between Shawn Ray and Paul Dillette at the 99 Mr. O. We'll be seeing more of Shawn in a few minutes, but as for Dillette, he was one of the names that unfortunately had to be left on the cutting room floor. I will say this for him though, Paul Dillette had probably the best midsection of any mass monster in history. That was undoubtedly a big part of what enabled him to remain so aesthetic despite his freakish size and proportions. But when we're talking about a top 10, that's a very select group, so difficult decisions had to be made. Anyway, back to Levrone. He could probably be ranked a spot or two higher, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. But these next two guys were no pushovers either, so you can be the judge. Take, for instance, Charles Clairmonte, coming in at number 9. Clairmonte was one of those underappreciated gems of the 90s, and to my mind, easily among the most aesthetic bodybuilders of all time. A key contributing factor to that had to do with his highly chiseled core. Clairmonte had extremely well defined abs and kept a very slim waistline with not so much as a hint of distension. Here he's seen at the 1993 Night of Champions posing alongside Milos Sarcev, who you can bet we'll encounter again a little later. And note the rock hard look through Clairmonte's entire midsection, just dry as a bone. Here they are again with a slightly off looking Andreas Munzer at the 93 German Grand Prix. Some truly textbook ab and thigh poses being presented there on the right. And this next pic showcases one of his signature shots, really highlighting the abs and that enormous biceps peak. It's amazing the guy never won an Arnold Classic with this kind of quality physique. The legendary Serge Nubret used to hit this pose too, and I guess now's as good a time as any to break the news that no, he won't be featured here. While Serge is debatedly the most aesthetic bodybuilder who ever lived, and certainly had one of the finest midsections of his era, I would argue that his abs, when taken in isolation, were rather overrated. They were well defined, sure, but also oddly formed and uneven, with very little supporting oblique development. So, at the risk of prematurely pissing off a bunch of viewers, there's just no way Nubret belongs on here. I would sooner put a Samir Banu or a Muhammad Makawe or even Tom Platz, who were all golden era icons with better midsections, in my opinion. Dexter Jackson lands solidly at number 8. Aptly nicknamed the Blade, Dexter's midsection was like deeply cut slabs of muscle, evenly stacked one on top of the other. There's no question the man had one of the most picture perfect, balanced six packs of all time. I know he's a bit more divisive today, as during the last decade or so, he's often come in looking a little bloated to varying degrees, and there are those, including yours truly, who have even likened his belly to a turtle shell for its somewhat rounded appearance. And I get that, it's a valid criticism, and it's why Dex doesn't crack the top 5. But we gotta remember that for the first half of his career, pretty much all the way through the 2000s, this wasn't really a problem. Just look at him back then at the 2003 Arnold and tell me what's wrong with this midsection exactly? And here he is again in some of the best shape of his life, standing next to a prime Jay Cutler at the '09 Olympia. Which brings us to yet another honorable mention. And yes, I'm going to try to sprinkle these in as we go this time rather than leaving them all to the end. Now, I'm sure this is going to rile up some people, but no, Cutler doesn't quite make the cut. Pardon the pun. Even though his abs were well separated and sunken, they always looked kinda messy to me. In other words, they weren't very symmetrical. But my main gripe with Jay is that his waistline was simply too wide and blocky. So while he's certainly one of the premier mass monsters when it comes to the abs, I wouldn't count him among the very best. Top 20 maybe, but not top 10. Moving on, we've got Thierry Pastel at number 7. Initially, I had this guy pegged for the top 3, but the more I looked past the one or two popular pictures that always pop up for him, the more I realized that he did have his flaws. For one, those abs were considerably lopsided. This isn't a huge problem in and of itself, but he also wasn't very consistent with his conditioning, it seems, which sometimes left the midsection looking a little faded, like here at the '94 Olympia. Still, Thierry had probably the best combination of a tiny waistline with huge, thickly developed abs that I've ever seen. Usually, when the abs are that big and pronounced, it's to be found on larger bodybuilders like Nasser Al Somebody. So, in any case, he's definitely deserving of his place on this list, and I wouldn't fault you at all if you feel he should place a little higher. But at the same time, I would add that his obliques didn't really match up to those awesome abs, so that's another thing to kind of nitpick against them. Up next at number 6 is Lee Priest. Famous for his world-class arms, the excellence of Lee's midsection is often overlooked. But it was exceptional, make no mistake about it. The guy had a legitimate 8-pack. Not only that, but the obliques were tight, the serratus was sharp, and the abs were totally symmetrical with virtually zero space in between. This photo from the 2002 GNC Show of Strength compares him directly to Dex and provided the justification to give him the nod over the timeless veteran. You can note that ugly split down the middle of Dennis James' abs over there on the right. Neither Dexter nor Lee has that, but Lee's abs look tighter packed and he's kicking Dexter's ass in the serratus department. So even though Dex's abs are thicker, I still think Lee's midsection is just a bit better overall. Here's a cool little collage the magazine's put together from the '98 Olympia. And here he is at that same contest, standing next to Sugar Shawn Ray. And probably beating him through the abs in this one, if we're being honest. Though not in terms of the obliques, which Shawn is emphasizing more by crunching to the side like that. My only complaint about Priest is that his abs were never that thickly developed. They always looked a little thin and flat. That's not necessarily a flaw when it comes to this particular muscle group, but compared to some of the top 5, he just doesn't stand out quite as much to my eyes. Case in point is Milos Sarcev, who finds himself at number 5. Milos had some gloriously well-developed abs. It was like 6 neatly laid bricks jutting out from an otherwise flat stomach. We talk about 3D muscles all the time today, especially when it comes to the shoulders, arms, and back, but rarely in the context of the midsection. Well, Milos had that 3D attribute in his abs. In fact, if this video was exclusively about the abdominals, he would likely be in the top 3. But my problem with Milos is the obliques. For one, they never seem to have all that much detail, comparatively speaking. And to make matters worse, they often appeared to be spilling over, thickening the waistline and ruining his flow somewhat. For this reason, I was originally not even planning to include him at all, but the more I thought about it, the more I came to the conclusion that his abs alone were simply too good to not earn a spot on this list. And for the record, you can find bad pictures of any one of these guys if you search long enough, so it's a little unfair to reject him on the basis of a couple of unflattering photos. But anyway, that's the main reason he doesn't finish any higher. Shawn Rhoden sits comfortably at number 4. I know what you're thinking. How's this guy so high? There's been a couple years when the lower portion of his abdomen was visibly protruding, and also a time back around 2012 when his belly button was grotesquely herniated. True enough. But keep in mind, those were temporary setbacks, and that for the overwhelming majority of his onstage appearances, say like 90% of the time, Rhoden's abs were nothing short of remarkable. He's easily got the best midsection of the current field, especially when you factor in the obliques, to which the likes of Rolly, Juan Morel, or even Hattie Chupan can't quite compare. Shawn's midsection is very reminiscent of Flex Wheeler's to me, and it's no wonder those two were often compared when Rhoden was coming up. And when he really nailed his conditioning like he did at the 2018 Mr. Olympia, his midsection was virtually unbeatable, especially in a day and age of insulin-fueled, pregnant-looking mass monsters. When he stood up there in the top 4 call-out next to Phil Heath, just shredded out of his mind, and presented a fully defined 8-pack, that's likely what tipped the scales in his favor and won him the Olympia. Alright, and if that last pick proves somewhat controversial, this one shouldn't. Flex Wheeler checks in at number 3. And I'm mainly talking young Flex in his early days when he was the most conditioned, like here in 1993. Back then, Wheeler's midsection was practically perfection. He was sliced and diced with an admirably streamlined waist. About the only flaw I can see is that his abs were uneven. You can actually count 4 on the left side, but only 3 on the right, so that technically throws off his symmetry. Of course, this is nitpicking to the max, but we gotta be hypercritical when we're talking about the best of the best. But even when he wasn't super peeled, like here at the 2000 Arnold Classic, midsection was still a major strong point and one of his most defined body parts, unlike, say, the hamstrings and glutes, where he was typically notoriously soft. I found it a little surprising, however, that when you look closely at these old contest photos from the 93 Arnold Classic and even the 92 USAs, you can already clearly discern those odd little bumps dotting his skin, which I believe to be the telltale sign of growth hormone use, as the stomach is a common site for GH injection. Now, I'm not a drug expert, so correct me if I'm wrong on that, guys, but I'm almost positive they weren't using insulin back then, and that wouldn't be caused from steroids. Anyway, here's one more with Lee Labrada, another potential candidate who ultimately fell short. Lee looks terrific in this photo, but this might very well be the single best ab shot of his you can find. At least that hasn't been touched up in a photo shoot or something. I'd still give Flex the edge because his abs were thicker and those obliques fanning out along the side there are just incredible. Shawn Ray is my pick for number 2. Ray's midsection was truly a work of art. It was just details packed on top of details. Whether we're talking abs, obliques, or serratus, he had it all. For my money, it doesn't get any better than this ab and thigh from the 92 Mr. Olympia. He had such perfect symmetry through this area too. I sometimes wonder if Ray would have been better suited to the moniker of Sultan of Symmetry rather than Flex Wheeler, who, as we just witnessed, had ironically asymmetrical abs. When twisting to the side, it literally looked like Shawn Ray had gills slanting along his torso. I don't think there's ever been more defined obliques than this. The only flaw you can sometimes notice, and an extremely minor one at that, is the slight gap running down the upper portion of his abs. This was more apparent in his later years, like here at the 99 Olympia, where he was probably pushing the GH dosages and playing the size game a little bit more than he used to. Incidentally, Chris Cormier also had a pretty strong midsection, but not quite top 10 material. Being as big a fan of Shawn's physique as I am, it was difficult to not choose him for number 1. But in the interest of being totally objective, I have to put him behind one other person, and this should go without saying, but yeah, it's the so called Tom Platz of abs, Big Lenny. Yeah, I'm so sick of you kids thinking you're being all clever and funny, mentioning this fat clown on every other bodybuilding video you come across. In fact, I actually put his name in my list of blocked words because it was becoming so annoying, so don't waste your time. Now, for those of you who don't understand sarcasm and may be questioning my sanity right now, don't worry, this is merely a played out joke, just like this Big Lenny character. Because the real number one spot belongs to Ahmad Haidar, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but Haidar's abs were so perfectly formed, they almost looked fake. It's like this dude had a six-pack surgically implanted. Or perhaps, as one commenter hilariously worded it, as though he had swallowed 6 bricks. The appropriately titled Abzilla was a less heralded bodybuilder from the early 2000s who really made his name from his midsection, as this was by far his most impressive feature. The shape, symmetry, and separation was second to none, and the size of each individual segment was proportionately enormous, but in a good way. Plus, the surrounding musculature of the obliques and serratus completed the picture without ever threatening to steal the show, as they sometimes did with Ray. The abs themselves will always be the highlight for Ahmed, as well they should be. Here's a little side-by-side comparison with a vintage Dexter Jackson. I believe this was taken from the O2 Arnold, and you can note that while they both look superb, Haidar's abs collectively are a little more rectangular, whereas Dexter's kinda taper and get narrower as you go up. I think this makes Ahmed's appear more prominent and with better symmetry from top to bottom. Here's another comparison with the top 6 from that same show, and this is a real all-star ab and thigh lineup. From left to right, you've got Kevin Levrone, Chris Cormier, Jay Cutler, Lee Priest, Dexter Jackson, and Ahmad Haidar. I mean, wow. This might be the single best call-out in history when we're focusing solely on the midsection. And in my opinion, Ahmad rightfully comes out on top. Maybe not as it pertains to the pose on the whole, but definitely if we're just talking about the midsection itself. This should really put it in perspective as to why they called this guy Abzilla. So yeah, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know if you agreed with these picks or if you think I missed anyone. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe because next time we'll be counting down the best biceps of all time. It should be a good one. Until then, this is the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.